back in this thing. Pretty chilly. Turn some lights on. Get a little bit of heat going. So page out of my book for today was understand how the brain works. Daily law. Put your faith in learning, not in technology. You know, as much as I love all this tech and all the AI and the ability to just pull out a little device and search any topic I like and get an instant answer, I know in the back of my mind all this can go away in the blink of an eye. Kind of like life. This can all just go away. You are not guaranteed the next moment in any way, shape, or form. And not only does that apply to your life in general, but that applies to all the technology that we love so much. You know, the sun's giving off solar flares all the time. I think NASA keeps track of those. For the very fact that a big enough solar flare can knock out every electrical device on Earth permanently. Just fry all the circuits with enough electrical activity. Kind of like the device I helped build. We wear grounding straps. A lot of the work areas that we have, they're ESD sensitive. ESD stands for electrostatic discharge, I believe. So we have these little straps that go around the wrist. Then it has a little wire that we plug in to reroute any electrical static activity that might be stored up in the body. Kind of like when you get a shock, right? Because any little shock like that can knock the device out. So at my level of the production line, I test the device every once in a while. It doesn't happen often. Every once in a while, I'll get a completely dead device. No signal. And the best that I can assume, because it goes to engineering, they figure out what happened, but what we tend to assume at our level and how I write it up is it was an ESD event. Dead device. Really no other explanation for it. So to rely on technology and not your own brain and your mind and the learning that you've accumulated could be catastrophically tragic. So that was a daily page. There's not a whole lot to say on that. Other than that, what I see when I scrolled my Instagram real quick, I saw a post of old Lakers footage when Kobe Bryant was playing. I believe we were in the it was the Western Conference Finals against the Dallas Maverick way back in the day. We were down by some huge amount, and it looked like everybody had given up on the Laker bench. They were just hands in there. Even Phil Jackson, this was back in the Phil Jackson coaching days, he looked like he was just that there was no hope, and the only person that was still hustling was Kobe Bryant. So this whole clip was put together, you know, little by little. Kobe kept working, shot after shot, you know, turnaround jumpers in the key, little quick step layups. He would get his man and beat him on the first step, get a quick layup. Little by little, all of a sudden, game is tied. Whole new game. And you can see Kobe Bryant's face. He's the only one with fire in his eyes. Everybody else is just checked out. And I believe we came back and won that game. It's a good metaphor for life. It doesn't matter how down you think you are. Just if you can make a little incremental improvement here and there over a long stretch of time, you can come out with a win. I know that for a fact. I did that myself. So, anybody out there having a hard time in life, just seems like it's not working out. Just make one small improvement today, even if it's a mental improvement. It doesn't have to be anything physical in your world. Just make a mental change now. Something. Just with the way you talk. Try to reframe how you vocalize anything. Try to strike all negative statements from your vocabulary. That's a big one. I catch people doing that all the time when it comes to how they talk. There's a lot of negatives that are expressed through how they vocalize their thoughts. And I think that's encouraged really through media and entertainment. A lot of the negative is what's put out there. And the white-pilled version of me wants to think that that's not on purpose. It just happens to be how it is. Human nature tends to focus on the negative. I don't know what this person's doing, so I'm going to go ahead and go. It's kind of part of our genetic structure to focus on something negative. I guess maybe it's to assess whether or not it's going to be a threat, or if it's something we should keep an eye on. It's the very reason people slow down when they go past a car crash. It's none of your business. You're not involved, but yet people have to. It just seems like it's the natural thing to want to slow down and see what happened. It's just, that's how it is. But if you could somehow cultivate the mental habit of focusing on the positive, take stock of all the positives in your life, even if you're, living out of a car. Hey man, you have a car. At least you have a car. There's always some way to dig your way out of the worst rut in life. If you just take an honest look at all the decisions that you've made that got you there to begin with, okay, maybe start making the ones that are in a different direction. And it has to start with your thinking. If you can't change how you think, you can't change how you act. And if you can't change how you act, then your life's going to keep going in the same direction that it's been going in. And if that's something you want to keep happening, especially if you're succeeding, good, keep doing that. But if you're absolutely miserable with your life, really you have no one to blame but yourself. This is a hard truth I had to come to when it came to my life. I had a habit of blaming other people because of the decisions I made, but ultimately in the end, the decisions I made, even if they were pressuring me to do something or think a certain way or be a certain way, in the end, I decided to be that way. Doesn't matter if you have 1 million people trying to influence you. Perfect example, COVID and the jab. The whole world was trying to influence people to get this inoculation, and they were saying the worst things in the world, and you're going to be the cause of deaths, and they were laying it on hard. And then my job, I knew it was coming. I knew I was going to get let go if I didn't fall in line, but I just refused. I did not feel comfortable, so I refused. But see, I'd become a completely different person by the time the pandemic rolled around. had I been me pre-2010, I probably would have got it. But through a course of fortuitous events, I had my mind rewired, and I was a completely different person. And a lot of people like to say that I'm very rebellious with how I am, but you know, when it came to being pressured into getting an inoculation I wasn't comfortable with, especially because of the things I was hearing, and what made it even more suspicious is the things I was hearing wasn't what you were hearing. You weren't hearing this on the news. It certainly wasn't in any kind of mainstream news. But the people I was hearing it from were very reputable people. You know, there's a lot of talk about conspiracy theory and tinfoil hat and all this verbiage. But the people I was listening to were doctors, like very high level doctors and virologists, and they were very educated in their field. You know, Peter McCullough and Dr. Robert Malone being the two main ones. And the things they were saying were completely different than what we were being told. So when it came to not listening to the crowd and the groupthink and going against the grain, I trusted them. Not everybody's, that goes with the daily law. Don't rely on your technology. All the Dr. Fauci, he was the science, he claimed. That was in a sense going with the technology. Trusting the science was trusting the technology of that day. The day of the pandemics. In a sense, that's the same thing. And I trusted my mind. I'm going to trust what my mind is thinking based on what I'm hearing. And I don't care if the science is saying that these jabs are going to save us. What I'm hearing is different. So my thinking brain said, nope, that's wrong. All this mRNA technology, there it is. Don't trust your technology. Trust your mind. I went with my mind. And that's what helped me avoid having to take that jab. I didn't care about losing my job. I didn't care about, people thinking badly of me. I chose the road less traveled. I don't even know what the numbers are when it comes to the percentage of people who didn't take the jab. But it has to be less than the people that did. I'm going to have to look that up later. But I can almost guarantee that there are more people inoculated against COVID that are not. That would be my guess. Right? They're doing all kinds of weird stuff. Like bribing people with free items. Like, I don't even remember what it was. You get a free something if you go get the shot. I thought that was even super suspicious. Like, what is going on? That seems super desperate in a weird way. And what really didn't make sense to me is like, okay, say for the people that didn't want to get the shot, if the shot worked like everybody was telling us it does, then the only people, because they were trying to say, oh, you're going to kill people if you don't get it. Well, the only people that are supposedly going to die are the ones that didn't get it then. And that's the fate we were okay with. Why does that bother you? It's not like you're being threatened. And you're threatening old people and children. Well, that aren't they getting the shot? Right? They're getting it. Pandemic of the unjabbed, they were saying. The only pandemic is the pandemic of the unjabbed. That's crazy. they fail to mention is that we were okay with that. I was okay with the consequence of not getting it. Even if it meant death. I'm okay with my death. I know that sounds morbid, but I've accepted my death. No matter when or where it comes. I've already looked it straight in the face. And I've already experienced it to a certain degree. That's a whole nother topic that I'll save for a video on depression, addiction, and reckless behavior, let's say. But fortunately, it worked out for me, my reckless behavior. Even though it's something I do have to keep in check from moment to moment. I can be extremely reckless with my behavior. So I have to keep that little, I said it before, I gotta keep that little dog on a leash. Well, I seem to be doing a good job. So kudos to me. It's pretty cool out here. Passing Budweiser, that's another manufacturing facility out here. I don't know if I'd ever want to make beer though. I don't want to be involved in that. Oh, you people and your slow driving. So yeah, that's what's going on in my mind this morning. About halfway through the valley right now. Probably a little more. See, high winds. The sign is telling me. High winds, north 14 through Antelope Valley. I'm not going on the 14. There's nothing on the 14 that I want to go see. Yep, trust your brain, trust your mind. But it's hard telling people that who have been completely sucked into the group thing. But for those who don't know, groupthink is a psychological phenomenon where you can get people to say and do things that really to go against what they feel and believe. But when they're in the context of a group and not isolated on their own, they are more likely to go with the flow of the group because they don't want to be the odd man out. They've done studies on this, psychological studies on this. And it's very interesting. If you look that up on YouTube, groupthink experiments, look that up. Or groupthink studies. It's very interesting to see how malleable the mind of a human is when they're just put under the slightest amount of pressure on something that's very unimportant. That's why when it came to the whole pandemic and the shots, I was like, ooh, this is a psychological manipulation tactic. Everything they're saying is being veiled under the guise of safety and compassion for, you know, the old or the vulnerable. But really what you're doing is you're psychologically manipulating the public on a mass scale. I think the newest phrase I heard is mass formation psychosis. If you look that up. I forget what the exact technical definition of that is, but it's pretty much a redefining of what groupthink really is. You and it was all structured with the foundation of fear and outrage, and just a lot of very unhealthy things to form any psychological structure. You can't found anything founded in fear is unhealthy, because most fears are irrational. So any foundation of irrationality in the mind, anything grown out of that is not good. That's why it's very healthy to face your fears, root them out, really analyze your mind honestly and dispassionately. You know, put your ego aside and say, okay, look, these are the things that I'm actually really afraid of, and then pick them apart. You know, how rational is this fear actually? You know, how healthy is this? I understand that sometimes there's severe allergies that people have, so maybe you should be fearful when it comes to like coming in contact with the things that'll trigger that. That's a very rational fear, and that's fine. And I know when it came to COVID, you know, they were really selling it as something to be rationally afraid of. But again, you guys weren't hearing the news streams that I was hearing. That's why you guys were only getting half the information. Not even that. You guys were not getting a very large amount of information. So that's what was interesting to watch play out in real time. Because I would hear what I would hear, and then I would hear what all you guys were hearing. And I was like, this is crazy that you guys aren't hearing this. They didn't mention this at all, what I just heard. And I know they knew it. If I was hearing it, I know they knew it. These people weren't dumb. They just were deciding not to report it, which made it even worse. Like, you guys are purposely ignoring this whole chunk of information that's very pertinent to the topic. And that's what, for me, made the whole thing play out in a very suspicious way. And that's when it came to the whole shot topic, I was like, nope, screw you guys. You weren't even giving the full range of information when it came to where the virus came from. You weren't giving the full range of information when it came to what these variants are and why they're happening, and what the outcome of the variants were. Because I was hearing from the very beginning, as these variants, as the virus develops and it goes from variant to variant, the significance of the impact of the virus was diminishing every time. And these variants were popping up quick, which means the virus was changing quick, which means the severity of the virus was diminishing pretty rapidly. And eventually it was going to become nothing pretty quick. And now when people talk about it, it's like, well, now it's just a cold, really, what you're catching. That's the level of severity that they give it now. It's pretty much common cold. And I heard this right away from virologists, from people that were at the top of their field. So I weighed all my options, and I used my mind and ignored the technology. I ignored the science of that day because the science had been corrupted. And I'm sure this is going to happen again. If you ask me, this was all a test run. This was a test run to see who would comply and who would not. So there's another round of this coming up. I think 2 more. I think the pandemic was phase 1 of a very large scale experiment. If you ask me, there's 2 more phases coming. That's just me and my tinfoil. I'll take that with a grain of salt. Alright, just getting over the hill. Now this is the halfway point. It's cold out here. How's that be, biz? A lot of trucks on the road. I noticed these freeways are falling apart because of all the trucks. I'm a creature of habit when it comes to the lanes I drive in. Everything really, do the same thing over and over again. So I noticed the usual lane I used to drive in for a while has been deteriorated significantly because of the amount of weight that these trucks are putting on it. Because I notice these trucks, I tend to drive behind trucks. So the trucks have very large amount of weights that they're moving, especially these transport trucks. And there are segments that are very cracked and damaged. And I know it's the trucks. See what they do about that. I'm still interested to see what this new silver-based battery technology will do, how that'll impact automotive manufacturing and specifically the trucks. I want to see if any of this technology will bleed over into the truck sector. You know, historically it's always been diesel, and that's more efficient for how these. Actually, to be honest, I think there's a there's a whole theory as to why the trucks are the only ones using diesel. Because from what I understand, I think it's more efficient all around. But there was something about why they wanted cars on gasoline and not diesel. And I think there's an economic factor. I don't really think it has anything to do with fuel efficiency or the environment or anything like that. I think that's all a big bunch of malarkey. But I have to look into that again. That's another red pill rabbit hole, maybe with a little tinfoil mixed in. But that's another rabbit hole to go down. So today, I saved a bunch of videos on my YouTube. Just switching gears. This has nothing to do with what I was just saying. That just popped into my mind. Miyamoto Musashi is going to be my rabbit hole for the day. I'm going to fill my mind with his philosophy. I believe I put the Book of Five Rings in, oh no I didn't, dang, I left it at home, but I brought it out so I could read it. There's so much for me to read. I need a bigger backpack. I was going to put it in my backpack to read, but I have so much in there already. I have my Daily Laws, which is a pretty fat book. It's at least 366 pages because it's a page a day, but it's probably a little more. It's probably close to 400 pages. There's an introduction, and I'm sure there's a conclusion to it aside from the 366 days of Daily Laws. And then I have the Kabbalion in there, and that's probably maybe probably less than 200 pages. And then the Book of Five Rings is probably a good 200 pages. But there's another teaching by Miyamoto Musashi called the Dokkoto. The Dokkoto. D-O-K-K-O-D-O. The Dokkoto. And that's like 21 bullet points of how to live. See, I think the Book of Five Rings is really his philosophy for tactics of like battle and tactical thinking and the application of those. But the Dokkoto is 21 bullet points on how to live, like philosophical living. And it's more like, don't become attached to too many things, because attachment creates suffering, especially when it comes to the letting go of the things that you become attached to. Life being one of them, really. So there's that. So I went on YouTube and looked up a lot of videos on him, and I found a bunch of them. 2 and 3, 2 and that 1.5 hour long videos. So I'm going to listen to those today. See if how much of Miyamoto Musashi's mind I can incorporate into my own. This is the kind of stuff I like to make part of me. This type of thinking. The other way. Almost there. Next exit's mine. But yeah, Miyamoto Musashi, renowned samurai, defeated 60 other samurais, which when they say defeated, I'm assuming he killed them. That's kind of how a samurai fight or battle ends, is with death. I don't think there was a lot of living to fight under the day when it came to being a samurai, especially when it was a one-on-one duel. I don't think there was much mercy being shown back in those feudal Japan days. But I believe Miyamoto Musashi became a Ronin, which is a masterless samurai. He was, I don't know exactly how he became masterless, or I don't know if he was ousted from his clan. I don't really know exactly what happened. I have to read. Pretty sure I'll find out today how that happened. But he became a wanderer, a Ronin. Which is a pretty cool word. A masterless warrior. Which means if you don't have a master, which in essence is a leader, that means you must master yourself. Become very rigid and fluid at the same time. You don't want to be so rigid that you can't be adaptable to the moment. It's very important. That balance. Rigidity and adaptability. Alright. Just exited safely, almost there. About to make my turn. That's about it. So let's see. How do we end this video as I approach my destination? Don't be a slave to technology. Use it. It's useful, so do use it. Don't become its slave. And don't let it become your master. You know, even all the AI, I do a lot of research when it comes to the things I hear. You know, I'm like, what? Let me look that up real quick. So I'll look it up. And a lot of the time, some of the stuff I hear is discredited. But even then, who discredited it? You know, look it up. Who said it's not true? Okay, that guy is not reputable. Let's dig a little deeper. You know, that's how I approach the shot. You know, especially this Dr. Fauci guy. Like, what? He was involved in AZT? Look that up. And he's the one that wants to give us this shot? Nope. Get that. Just that alone. Just based on him saying that this is what we have to do. No, I know what you did with AZT. So no thank you. So open up your mind to all the information. Weigh all your options and make the choice that's best for you. Try to eliminate fear as a calculation into the decisions that you make. especially the ones that are super important in life. You know, if you're brave enough, choose the life of the Ronin. Become a masterless warrior. Become master of your own mind and thoughts. Good luck. Let's go to work.